Ignite your curiosity with Austin Next. We're watching Austin transform from a thriving ecosystem into a global superstar. With our host, Jason Scharf, we aspire to better comprehend the true nature of innovation. Together, we will uncover what makes a successful ecosystem and navigate the technologies shaping our future. Now let's dive into what's next.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Austin Private Wealth, a registered investment advisor focused on fee-only financial planning and investment management. Their mission is to serve affluent clients with personalized financial advice, fostering a trusted relationship that will endure for generations to come. Austin Private Wealth is not just about managing wealth. They're about inspiring you to embrace a future filled with possibilities and helping you architect enduring legacies. Their core values of integrity, service, caring, excellence, and growth are at the heart of everything they do. Connect with them today at austinprivatewealth.com.
Austin Private Wealth is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Austin Private Wealth and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by Austin Private Wealth unless a client service agreement is in place. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
This is another in our series unique to Austin. And there is nothing more unique about Austin than South by Southwest. Over the past 30 years, Austin has grown, matured, and adapted to everything new, and South by has as well. Today, after 2 years of dealing with the pandemic, South by Southwest is back, and it's live. From March 11th through the 20th, there will be hundreds of presentations across dozens of topics, as well as workshops, seminars, screenings, and of course, music. We are happy to have Hugh Forrest, Chief Programming Officer for South by Southwest, and appreciate him taking some time away from the mad rush just before the event. Hugh oversees content for the South by Southwest Conference, as well as the music festival, the film festival, and the educational aspects of the program. He was named Austin Night of the Year in 2012 by the Austin Chamber of Commerce, and in 2014, he and other South by Southwest directors were named Austin Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. Before joining the South by Southwest team, he founded the Austin Challenger and wrote for several other newspapers and publications. Today, we want to take this up a level, discussing more than the 2022 conference. Not only do we want to discuss the history of this Austin icon, but how it fits into the innovation ecosystem, how local companies are part of South by Southwest, and what's in store for the future. Welcome, you. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks for taking some time from your crazy schedule to be part of the Austin Next podcast. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
We want to start with a kind of a brief recap of South by Southwest history. Talk to us about the beginnings of South by and what was the impetus for its creation?
Well, South by Southwest is much older than most people or a lot of people think. The event started way back in 1987. Austin was a much different place back in 1987, but it was a place that celebrated and cultivated creativity. And I think it's very much a place that celebrates and cultivates creativity now. And that's always been the DNA that has fueled South by Southwest. When South by Southwest started in 1987, it was entirely focused on music and media. It was called the South by Southwest Music and Media Conference. To get a little more into that history, it was somewhat patterned after an event in New York called the New Music Seminar. The New Music Seminar is where a lot of your favorite bands from the mid to late 80s were discovered. Madonna, things like that, acts like that. And at one point, the organizers of the New Music Seminar were going to branch out to Austin and create this thing called New Music Seminar South or something along those lines. Unfortunately, those plans fell through, and the local folks who were going to work with the organizers from New York decided to do the event on their own. The local folks were largely centered around the Austin Chronicle. And lo and behold, they managed to pull this thing off. And it has been growing and improving and celebrating creativity ever since then.
And 35 years, my God, it's amazing. So when did South by become South by?
Well, I think it's like a lot of things, Austin. I think your question is more like, when was South by Southwest still authentic, as opposed to, what it is now? Because it was a lot better 5 years ago. That is, for everyone who's lived in Austin for any amount of time, you've heard that refrain constantly, and it's true. The city was great 5 years ago. It's going to be even better 5 years from now. So there. But I think that, to your question of when did South by become South by, I mean, again, we've always celebrated creativity in all its many forms, and that hasn't changed since the beginning. What has changed is just kind of more avenues of creativity that we've added to the mix. So when we started in 1987, almost entirely focused on music, but a little bit of focus on media. And again, that was because of the Austin Chronicle and the network of AAN papers that it was connected to. In 1994, we added what was then called film and multimedia, because multimedia was the relative state of the art back in 1994. After 1 year, we separated those into two different events, so a film event and a multimedia event. The multimedia event eventually, the name eventually transitioned to interactive, and that's roughly the three pillars that still stand today. But over the years, we've simply added more areas of focus. A lot of that was because of this panel picker interface we use to kind of a modified crowdsourcing approach to programming, and that opened up conference programming to all different kinds of verticals. So someone who is involved with food, who'd always wanted to speak at South by Southwest, put in a session related on food. And lo and behold, soon enough, we had a handful of sessions on food, and similar many other verticals. I will also say that has been part of the formula for expansion, so to speak. I think another part of the formula for expansion is simply kind of following the lead of what the vibe of the city is. I mean, the fact that we added film and multimedia in 1994 clearly reflected some of the new industries that were popping up in Austin at that time period. Multimedia being, this little computer company called Dell that was beginning to stretch its legs and become more than a little computer company, and film with people like Robert Rodriguez and Rick Linkletter, making this a nice little capital of indie filmmaking. More recently, we have added, say, a health and med tech track, and that is certainly in large part due to the fact that we have a Dell Medical School in Austin, and the long tail of health tech, med tech, biotech, gen tech, however you want to phrase it, activity that has followed the Dell Medical School. One of our new tracks for 2022 is that we have a transportation track. So focusing on all kinds of innovation within the transportation sphere. On the one hand, this is reflective of a lot of tech events, CES, where car shows become tech shows and tech shows become car shows, but it is also very, very reflective of what Elon has birthed here in Austin with the Cybertruck factory, that there's a lot more transportation startups in the city. There's more established transportation companies that are interested in the city. It's growing. That sector of the economy is growing like crazy, and it certainly made sense for us to cover it more in 2022. And I say more because we've done some transportation stuff in the past, but probably not as much ever as we're doing for 2022.
Well, last time we talked, you did tell me that South by Southwest has always reflected Austin, and I think the changes you just described indeed show that to be true. Tell me what are some of your fondest memories about South by over the years. What stuck out?
the fondest memories I have of South by Southwest are just meeting and connecting with people on site during the event, and certainly more specifically there, it's people telling me that this is the highlight of their year, that they get a year's worth of inspiration by coming to Austin in the spring, that they came here last year, they found a new job, they found an investor, they found a startup they wanted to invest in, they met their boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or husband by coming to the event. So it's really neat to be involved with an event that has that kind of impact on a lot of very, very creative people. In terms of very much more specific things, I mean, I'll certainly always remember the 2016 when we were fortunate enough to have President Obama come to South by Southwest. That was certainly a huge, huge highlight. And then similarly, roughly 5 months later, we worked with the White House on an event in Washington, D.C. called South by South Lawn. So it was like a mini South by Southwest at the South Lawn of the White House. And that was really, really neat also. I think my favorite story that I've told this story several times. One of my favorite memories from South by Southwest was 2009, which was the year that we had a young entrepreneur in the social media space speaking at South by Southwest. This person had a small startup that a few people were on, and seemed like it had some pretty interesting plans for expansion. That young founder was one Mark Zuckerberg, and his startup was obviously Facebook. We were fortunate enough to have him as a keynote speaker that year. Unfortunately, the keynote was by all accounts, a pretty large scale disaster. We had a lot of people get up mid keynote and leave the session. It just, everything that went wrong, that could have gone wrong, went wrong. And that was disappointing for us, disappointing for Facebook, disappointing, I think, for our audience. Now that in itself is not my favorite memory. The favorite memory is a day later, we had a keynote. Our next keynote was a gentleman named Frank Warren, who has a project called Post Secret, which is still going. It's not quite as popular as it was 10 or 15 years ago, but it's a kind of internet meme that has a real world tie-in where people write their secrets on postcards. They send it to Frank, and he posts these online. And his basic thesis is that our secrets are what hold us back. And if we can release our secrets and absolve ourselves of these secrets, our future is much brighter. At that point, Frank was doing a bunch of shows. I mean, he would do 200 shows a year. I saw him at Book People maybe 6 months before South by Southwest. I was absolutely blown away. I was like, God, we got to get this person for South by Southwest. And the same thing happened at South by Southwest as what happened at Book People, which is that by halfway through his presentation, the whole audience is crying because the power of this idea of releasing secrets. And why I like that story is that it was two completely different visions or versions of online community. You had this vision of Facebook, which I think a lot of the reason why people left was they felt that this was, even in 2009, they saw that there was perhaps an exploitative nature there of this vision of community. And then a day later, this Frank Warren vision, which was much more authentic and just really struck our community as what they want at South by Southwest. And the icing on the cake or the cherry on top or whatever of Frank Warren's presentation, and this was essentially on the fly. I mean, I knew that it was going to happen 10 minutes before it happened, but not much longer. Is that he asked for audience, he did 10 minutes of audience Q&A at the end of his presentation, and the second person who came up to the stage for Q&A took out a ring and asked his girlfriend to marry him on stage.
Wow.
And she was in the audience. So, I mean, that whole thing, I would love to say that we planned that out and we scripted that. It was all like figured out. It wasn't, but it was the dramatic arc of conflict and resolution there worked out really well.
I'm assuming she said yes.
She did say yes.
Oh,
I
good.
think they were in New York at the time. I think they actually, like everyone else, moved to Austin a few years ago. So there.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, really. So let's talk about this year. What are you most excited about for 2022? I know for me, I'm most excited about it being live again.
Yeah. Well, certainly that. I mean, this is our first live event since 2019, 3 years. It's a long time. A heck of a lot has happened over that time period. We did a completely virtual event last year, and I think we were generally pleased with how that went and learned a lot. That said, we got 30 years of experience, 30 plus years of experience doing live events. So getting back to what we do best, we're all very excited about. We're certainly also very excited that I'm going to say knock on wood still, because I'm superstitious, that Omicron seems like it is plateaued and is receding in Austin as it is around the US and generally around the world. So people do feel safer coming to big events like South by Southwest. We will have very rigorous safety protocols, but yes, more people feel safe about the event. From a more specific standpoint, in terms of speakers, one of the ones that I am most excited about for 2022 is one of our keynote speakers, someone that I've wanted to have at South by Southwest for 20, 25 years. And it's just, the timing has never quite worked. And it's always all about timing on these things. This is the science fiction author, Neil Stephenson, who he's got a new book out about climate change, but most people know him from his book Snow Crash, mm-hmm. which essentially predicted the metaverse, long before that previous keynote speaker thought about renaming his company as such. So it'll be great to have him at South by Southwest. Really excited, but I'm even more so. I'm excited to have an in-person event, something where people can come together. I think that you've heard this meme from me before, but I think one of the things we learn every year at South by Southwest, or relearn, that it's an event about music, it's an event about film, it's an event about technology, it's an event about food, it's an event about cars, it's an event about spaceship. No, it's really an event ultimately about people getting together and connecting face to face. And that power of what happens when you put a whole bunch of creative people together in a city that celebrates creativity in a time of the year when it's getting warmer, the flowers are beginning to come out, the days are getting warmer, and some really amazing things can happen. And that's always been a formula for what we've done and what we've done successfully at South by Southwest.
Well, this year's going to be a hybrid event, as I understand it. So we'll take some of the best from the online virtual event of last year and obviously the best of live events. What's that going to look like for the attendees?
Hybrid, the magic of that word is that it can mean basically anything, right? It is appropriately vague, but what will it mean is we will have quite a few attendees who only buy the virtual badge. So they will attend virtually. As with last year, that opens the event up to lots of people who could never attend in person. And really excited about that, and really excited how that expands our market long term. For people who have bought a traditional badge, regular badge, they can experience the event in person at the convention center, at the Hilton, at the many film venues that we use, the many music venues that we use all around Austin. But they can also go online and watch content that way. So if they miss a session in one of our bigger rooms, they can click back on the day later and watch that session off of our VOD, video on demand offerings. So it would give people a little more flexibility in terms of how they absorb the content and engage with the content. And certainly one of the coolest aspects of that is that it will help to a small degree mitigate the ever-present concept of FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a big part of South by Southwest, but not always in a positive way. So if you're a little more relaxed that I don't need to attend that session because I can watch it later or listen to the podcast of it later, then maybe that helps improve the experience in some significant ways also.
That was always one of the stressors when I was going to conferences. There was always 2 sessions that I really, really wanted to go to. And of course, they were scheduled to be at the exact same time. And it's like, what do I do now? We talked a little bit about attendance. What do we look like for attendance, on this year's event?
It's a little, we're taping this essentially 10 days before the event begins. It's still a little bit hard to tell because our patterns of attendance have been so different our patterns of registering have been so different in 2022 than ever before. And that is mainly because of COVID. February has been probably our biggest February ever, with lots and lots of signups and essentially more signups every day than the next day. And that again aligns with more people feeling more comfortable about coming to Austin because they're reading that Omicron has receded and declined. So I think we'll continue to see that very strong sign-up numbers for the next 10 days as we head into the event. I don't know if we will reach the attendance totals we had in 2019. I think we'll be pretty close. Certainly, we will probably have a little less international attendance than we had over the last few years. The internationals had grown to become about 25% of our attendees, which is a neat thing. But certainly in a in a COVID world or a world coming out of COVID, that international stuff maybe becomes a little bit of more of a challenge than an asset. But anyway, I think that it will. The crowds will be great. As always, a lot of different people from a lot of different places who have that one common theme of being incredibly creative in one or two different pursuits in their life and looking to connect with other very creative people.
So we talked about how South by is a reflection of Austin in many ways and kind of both a leader and kind of follower in what we're talking about. But from a more nuts and bolts kind of integration, how have Austin companies been able to leverage South by to make an impact? And then are they able to actually utilize kind of a home court advantage?
I think that Austin companies across the board have gotten better and better in terms of utilizing the event, whether that is, hosting some kind of official or unofficial event at their space, whether that is, if they're a bar or restaurant, finding ways to get more of those out-of-town visitors to come to their place of business, whether that is just understanding the best ways to network, best places to network, or whether it's understanding the best places to park when you want to go downtown to see music or see a movie or something like that. There is a little bit of a home court advantage on all those aspects. So, I think that the fact that Austin is home to South by Southwest, that South by Southwest happens in Austin, is one of the many factors that has been a part in the city's big growth boom over the last 10 years and even more specifically over the last year and a half. A lot of people get their first taste of Austin, particularly a lot of people from the tech industry, when they come to Austin in March for South by Southwest. And it may be that's probably a very different taste than when you come here in July or August or September, but it nonetheless is, a great touch point and certainly inspires a lot of people to think about, hey, maybe I could live here. This is a pretty neat place.
I do want to pull on that thread actually, because one of the things that has been really fascinating about Austin is when you look at the raw data, I don't care if it's VC fundraised or it's new startups or Fortune 500 companies, our actual numbers versus what's going on in the national narrative, we continually seem to punch above our weight, which of course then becomes a wonderful self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's funny, how much do you think South by is a part of that Austin narrative and making it larger than the sum of its parts?
Yes, I think so. I think we are part of that dynamic where the city's reputation in some ways is more impressive than the actual nuts and bolts of what's happening here. That said, I think that argument is a little less valid in the last year or 2 years as more and more of the kind of infrastructure that makes a strong tech ecosystem or a strong ecosystem in any number of other industries have relocated to the city. And that happened for a number of different reasons, but certainly the most pressing reason was that the workplace changes because of COVID made more people realize I don't have to live in Silicon Valley if I don't want to, or San Francisco or LA or whatever, and I'm going to opt for a place that I think has better quality of life. Again, I think that I don't quite want to say fake it until you make it, but there's certainly a little bit of that with what Austin has done. And, we've been a part of that, but there's certainly a number of other things that have helped create this reputation of this, amazing city in the middle of Texas, whether that's ACL or, Eeyore's birthday party or Circuit of the Americas, F1, so many things that have contributed to this. I 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, 10 years ago, we talked a lot about the festival economy and how that was benefiting Austin, where lots of people would come to the city for these different festivals. And the presumption or the supposition or the hypothesis was that was going to lead to, real economic activity, real growth, real, waves of migration here. And I think that largely was accurate. I don't think that 10 years ago anyone was predicting the pandemic, but again, predicting that the celebration of creativity, focus of creativity, would continue to pay long-term dividends for the city.
Yeah, as you said, the pandemic necessarily didn't create new trends; it accelerated some of the underlying ones.
Yep.
And I agree. It does feel like when you look back at the last 20, then 10, then 5, like we're clearly at one of those inflection points going forward and moving from kind of, I think, almost the virtuous flywheel to almost a center of gravity now. Now, the more things that are coming here is really pulling in more and more, and almost the, an Austin FOMO where it's like, oh, well, it's happening there in Austin, so I'm probably going to be there as well. As we think about going forward, right, and looking at the future, and as we see Austin continuing to evolve in different and interesting ways, we've talked about the tracks and so forth, but also as South by is evolving. I mean, so one obviously the big things is you guys had the Penske investment. How do you see that changing your approach to the future?
Hard to say at this point. I mean, we're still at the front end of this investment and this partnership. This will be our first year, or our first event that we've worked together. There have been a lot of great things about the partnership so far. It's also there, as with any new partnership, it's a matter of learning how to dance and not stepping on each other's toes, and a little bit of that. But I also say that there's a little bit of same as it ever was here. When South by Southwest started in 1987, our partner was the Austin Chronicle. Now, the Austin Chronicle is not quite as mammoth a media beast as PMC, Penske Media Corp, but it was the big media thing in Austin in 1987. So there's always been that kind of media wing to the event. And in that sense, it's not completely uncharted territory. I think as we move, into the latter half of 2022 and 2023, there are a lot of new projects that we'll work together on with Penske. That's really exciting. I think that in the big picture, one of the best things about South by Southwest is we've always embraced change and embraced evolution and embraced what's next, as opposed to trying to just duplicate what we did the year before. And the fact that we started with music, we embraced film and technology, Now we have, world leaders coming to the event. That again shows how much the event has evolved and how much it will continue to evolve. And that's pretty neat. That's pretty exciting.
So I still know that we're heading up to 2022, but I'm asked to take a little bit to the view to the future. What do you think are the biggest challenges that you face for 2023 and beyond?
I think the challenges that we face are, how do we continue to expand the audience in various different directions at once, meaning, and I'm fumbling a little bit to get to something I like to talk about a lot, which is that again, South by Southwest parallels Austin. And we need to continue to aggressively embrace solutions that will get younger registrants into the event, people who may not be able to afford a badge at what a badge is priced now, younger companies, younger startups. That's certainly been one of the changes that we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years is the price of attending the event has increased significantly. And again, that parallels what we see in Austin, where the price of living here is increased significantly. So that's certainly one big challenge as to how to, bring in a new younger audience as the event continues to grow and serve a relatively well-established audience. Also, I think we need to continue to embrace new technologies. We had a online metaversical world in 2021. We'll do that again in 2022. We're going to certainly continue to see more of that moving forward. I don't think that it's ever going to come anywhere close to replacing the full South by Southwest experience. But I think for a small portion of the audience, or maybe even a portion of the audience, that will be a way that more and more people will experience the event. I also think that, again, there'll be new topics that we aren't touching on much now, but we'll probably, embrace in more significance in the future. One that I think that I can see that we'll do more of, we really haven't done a whole lot of over the last couple of years is, quantum computing. That's certainly something that has all the buzz of that's going to be the next big thing. It's probably a ways out still, but it's something that we should be embracing more fully. And I think that if you go back and look at how long these things go from being a concept that we talk about at South by Southwest to full on everyone's involved. I mean, we were doing sessions on Bitcoin and blockchain 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And at that point it was kind of, for sure, that's that crazy talk. And then all of a sudden it just kind of exploded. And you see that with a lot of things of it's kind of a slow runway and then it just all of a sudden boom. So again, we hope to be at the first part of that runway with a lot of these upcoming trends.
So Hugh, this has been fantastic. And we always like to ask our guests the same question at the end here. Hugh Forrest, what's next, Austin?
What's next, Austin? I hate to cop out and say that whatever is next in Austin, as long as we are true to our heritage of creativity, of innovation, of helping each other out, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that our future is very strong, and I hope that South by Southwest continues to be a big part of that future, and I think that we will be as long as we continue to focus on creativity and innovation and the best and brightest new ideas and inspire people to do better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So what's next, Austin? We're glad you've joined us on this journey. Please subscribe at your favorite podcast catcher, leave us a review, and let your colleagues know about us. This will help us grow the podcast and continue bringing you unique interviews and insights. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.